Hi, my name is Naomi, and I want to tell you my horrible story. My boyfriend and I broke up, all because a new teacher came to our school. So, Mark and I started dating at the beginning of the summer. It was the perfect relationship. We went out together, talked, went to the movies and cafes, spent all the time together, and it seemed that no one could separate us. But the summer holidays ended quickly, and we went to our senior year. I was sure at the time that school would only make our relationship even better. But I was wrong. When chemistry class started, a new teacher, Miss Yang, walked into the classroom. At that moment, all the guys in our class looked at each other and smiled. She was a dazzling beauty with a great figure. At first, I thought that with a new teacher, my chemistry lessons would be a lot more interesting than before. But after the first lessons, I began to notice how everything changed. All the boys from our class started learning chemistry and tried to perform their best in her class. Even my boyfriend, who used to pay no attention to his studies and mostly focused on his sports career, suddenly started sitting over his textbooks every night and studying chemistry. As soon as class started and the teacher asked a question, immediately all the guys in our class were reaching out to answer. Then Miss Yang would pick a student and talk sweetly with him. Miss Yang knew the subject pretty well, but I was beginning to hate chemistry. Because now all Mark did was tell me how to solve chemistry homework. I didn't like it, but I tried to ignore it, even though I sometimes was mad at Mark. But once he told me that he was going to be late after school studying in the library and asked me not to wait for him. I ignored that at the time and went home. The next day, Mark became even more cold to me, and he refused to walk me home again because he wanted to stay late at the library. I decided to follow him, but to my surprise, Mark went not to the library, but to the chemistry room. Peeking through the doorway, I was dumbfounded. There was Miss Yang giving my boyfriend private lessons. He was writing and talking and gesturing with his hands. And Miss Yang was smiling back at him, and then they laughed and giggled. It made me terribly angry. I realized that Mark was ignoring me for a reason. And it was all about the new teacher. Now I knew exactly what to do. The next day, I went to the principal's office and told her that our chemistry teacher was acting like a promiscuous woman. I reported about her revealing clothes and that our boys joke about her. I also said that she was flirting with the students, especially Mark. The principal was furious. He called Miss Yang in for a talk. And a couple of hours later, I saw the teacher come out of the office in tears and with the dismissal papers. It was a victory for me. I was really happy to get rid of the competition. But the rumors quickly spread around the school and reached Mark. He was furious. "Why did you do that? You said all kinds of silly things. And now the teacher who knew her subject very well has been fired." Mark said that Miss Yang was a great chemistry teacher, and that he enjoyed the subject so much that he decided to link his life with chemistry. And to improve his knowledge, he asked for extra classes. There could be nothing between him and the teacher, because she loved her job very much and would never risk her reputation for the sake of some schoolboy. And Mark also admitted that he ignored me because he was just tired of studying. But now he didn't want to see me at all. I thought he needed time to forgive me, and in a couple of weeks he'd get over it and we'd be happy again. But it turned out that Mark continued to go to Miss Yang's for extra classes at her house. Sometimes I followed them and saw them kissing goodbye. And I was shocked. So he lied to me? And there is something between them. What should I do? Should I talk to him? Tell his parents? Talk to that teacher? What would you do? Write to me. I really need your advice.
Hello, I'm Maggie, and I just got out of the psych ward. But no, I'm not their patient. I'm visiting my mom. She has depression, and has had it for a long time. But let me explain you everything in detail. I always felt sorry for my mother because she raised me by herself. To all my questions about my father, my mother answered briefly and without much emotion. He died, and nothing to worry about, he didn't love you, and that it was hard to love me. After all, I'm a cripple. For as long as I can remember, I have been on crutches. Mom said that there were difficulties during childbirth. I was severely traumatized, and because of this, my knees hurt. My mom has been taking care of me all this time. She makes sure that I take the necessary meds on time to not get tired. So after school, I have to go straight home, where my mother is waiting for me and a delicious lunch. And yeah, my mom had to look for a job at home to look after me. And for that, I am so grateful to her. In my class, everyone is already used to the fact that I'm on crutches. Nobody pays attention to it. But one day, we had a newcomer who started making fun of me. At home, I told my mother everything. She was silent, but I saw how she tightly clenched her hands into fists. The next day, this guy came up to me before class and asked for forgiveness for his words. I was surprised. I decided to forgive him and just start talking as if nothing had happened. But he quickly waved his hands and did not approach me again. That same evening, my mother and I went to the grocery store. There were a lot of people, and one woman accidentally ran into me. I lost my balance and fell to the floor. The woman began to apologize and gave me her hand to help me up. But then my mother showed up. She pushed the woman away from me so that she almost fell herself. Mom grabbed her by the shoulder and whispered something in her ear. The woman turned pale and quickly left. A day later, the local news reported that a woman was missing, and on the screen appeared a photo of the same woman that I ran into at the store. Mom sat next to me and watched the news with a stone face. I couldn't stand it and asked if she was involved in this. Mom suddenly boiled up, jumped up from the sofa, and started yelling at me. She said that she worries about me, protects me, and all the people around me wish me harm, but she would never, ever let them bully me. I was shocked. I've never seen my mother like this. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands were shaking. I even got scared. And then she just as abruptly calmed down. She looked at me with glassy eyes, stroked my head, and said that I should take my medicine and go to bed. When I was packing, I suddenly heard my mother was talking loudly, even cursing. I walked out into the corridor and quickly approached my mother's room, and I heard something that horrified me. "Don't you dare tell me how to raise her. You are dead to her. And for me too. Do not call me anymore." I was thrown into a cold sweat. I understood who my mother was arguing with. It was my dad, and he didn't die. I didn't sleep at night. I snuck into my mother's bedroom and wrote down the phone number she called that evening. And in the morning, when I was walking to school, I dialed the operator to find out where this call came from. When I learned the coordinates, to my surprise, I found that Dad was 100 miles away from me. We were only 100 miles apart. Instead of school, I hurried to the bus station and went to the city that the operator named me. The navigator, when I entered the indicated coordinates, led me to a small service station. A handsome, tall man came out to greet me, and I immediately realized this was my father. "Megan?" He recognized me. I was so glad. A few minutes later, we were sitting in a nearby pizzeria, and he told me a story that made me feel uncomfortable. It turned out that he was looking forward to my birth, but But something happened to my mother when she first took me in her arms. She was constantly afraid that something bad might happen to me. She refused help, argued with my father, and soon kicked him out of the house. Tried to argue with him, saying that it was not easy with me and that my mother could be understood. I didn't walk, but my father shook his head in denial. "You ran, Megan. You rode a bike and jumped rope, I remember it well." All of a sudden, my knee started to hurt. I pulled out the medicine to drink, but my dad stopped me. He took the medicines and called his friend who's a pharmacist. Half an hour later, he examined the meds. He said that this is the strongest psychotropic drug, large doses of which lead to terrible pain in the joints. It turns out that my mother poisoned me, but why? I didn't have the strength anymore. I cried. Dad hugged me tightly and promised that he would never hurt me. We went home. I was very scared. I was afraid that when my mom sees my father, my mother would do something crazy. But Dad, knowing what to expect from her, called the police. They detained her. Then there was a trial, doctors' conclusions, and forced treatment in a mental hospital. I stayed with my father. I forgot about crutches and joint pain. Now I'm an ordinary girl who plays football with friends and just enjoys life. But my conscience still bothers me. After all, because of me, my mother's in a mental hospital. I visit her, and after the visits, it's even more difficult for me. She's under heavy tranquilizers, and she doesn't always recognize me. Sometimes she just sits and smiles. I don't know what I should do. Should I visit her? Or close this page of life and move on? What would you do? Write in the comments, please. I'll be waiting. And also, promise me that you subscribe to my channel. It's very important for me.